Hello everyone, now you will hear a short summary of the film Troy. Enjoy watching. 12th century BC, King Agamemnon conquered all the Greek kingdoms. Only Thessaly remained unconquered. Two armies are ready to start a battle. The kings rode up to each other on chariots. Agamemnon offered Triops to save the soldiers' lives. Let their best warriors meet in a fight, and if Triops' fighter wins, the invader will leave his land. Triops called the mighty giant Briseis. Agamemnon called Achilles, but he did not even show up for the battle. The great warrior was resting in a tent with women, but a boy messenger woke Achilles and told him about a formidable enemy who frightened him. The boy said, "I would be afraid to fight him." Achilles replied, "And therefore you will be unknown." Agamemnon suggested that Achilles sleep it off, and he, being insulted, was about to leave but still decided to save hundreds of lives of Greek soldiers. Achilles said, "Imagine if the kings fought each other themselves. That would be a spectacle." The fight ended in an instant. Dodging two spears, Achilles killed his opponent with one blow of his sword. Triops wanted to hand the victorious warrior his scepter, but Achilles refused. Sparta is ruled by Agamemnon's brother Menelaus, and he is tired of many wars, so he decided to make peace with the impregnable Troy. In honor of this event, the king threw a feast and invited the Trojan princes to his palace. The younger brother Paris does not take his eyes off Menelaus's wife, Helen, as she does not take her eyes off him. It turned out that his wife had been cheating on Menelaus with the young prince all week, but the time had come for him to sail back to his homeland. Paris suggested that Helen run away and come what may. In the morning on the ship, Paris approached his brother Hector and asked if he would always protect him. He had done something wrong. Helen was hiding in the hold. Paris had taken someone else's wife, which made Menelaus incredibly angry. But their father Priam had been trying to achieve peace with Sparta for many years. Paris said that he was ready to die in battle in the name of love, but the young man had never participated in battles. Menelaus came to his brother Agamemnon and asked him to help him take revenge, to burn Troy to the ground, and the tyrant only needed a pretext to attack Troy. True, no one had ever managed to conquer Troy, but Agamemnon would throw all the conquered peoples into battle. He also needed Achilles, although the king hated this warrior for refusing to swear allegiance to him. Achilles was busy training his young brother Patroclus when Odysseus, the ruler of Ithaca, visited him, the only person the great warrior listens to. Achilles was not going to fight for the hated king or his cuckolded brother, but this war will be remembered for centuries, as will its heroes. Achilles came to his mother Thetis for advice. If the man stays here, he will find peace and start a family, but in a few generations his name will be forgotten. But in Troy Achilles will find glory. People will compose legends about him for thousands of years, but the warrior will not return. He will die in this war. Achilles wanted to become great, so he went to Troy on one of 1,000 ships. The Trojans pompously greeted their princes, not suspecting how much grief Paris's trick would bring them. His father Priam was forced to accept Helen. Hector returned to his beloved wife and little son. In addition to his sons, Priam has a daughter, Briseis, who has decided to devote her life to serving in the temple of Apollo. Hector does not want the people of Troy to suffer because of his brother, but Priam is sure that Apollo and the strong walls will protect them. The lovers are also afraid, so Paris suggested running away from here too. They will live in the forest, hunt and fish. But Menelaus will burn house after house until he finds them. In the morning, the Trojans set up thick stakes on the shore. Hector was so happy at home with his family, but then an incredible fleet appeared on the horizon that scared all the inhabitants of Troy, so weapons were given to everyone who could hold them. Achilles' ship will moor to the shore first, and he strictly forbade Patroclus to go into battle today. Achilles landed with 50 Myrmidons, skilled and desperate warriors of Greece. They are opposed by the defenders of the Temple of Apollo, who managed to kill some of the Myrmidons with arrows, but then the warriors closed their shields and approached the enemies closely, after which they carried out a brutal massacre. The giant Ajax was also eager to join the battle, who destroyed his opponents with his huge hammer. Achilles single-handedly slaughtered all the warriors guarding the entrance to the Temple of Apollo. He allowed the Myrmidons to plunder the temple, and he himself cut off Apollo's head. Hector's detachment rode up here, but Achilles killed one of the warriors with a spear and lured the prince into the temple. His men set up an ambush and killed all the Trojans except Hector himself. Achilles was going to kill him in front of the crowd, but now he will give him the opportunity to return back to the fortress. Meanwhile, the entire countless army of Agamemnon landed on the shore. All the priests of the temple were killed. Only the king's daughter Briseis remained alive. She was taken to Achilles' tent, in case he wanted to have some fun with her, but the warrior didn't lay a finger on her. Achilles was called to the royal tent where Agamemnon was being honored as the winner of today's battle. He was sure that he would also easily conquer all of Troy. Achilles said with disdain, "Perhaps the kings could not see well from afar, the warriors won the battle, but the angry tyrant wanted to insult Achilles and took Briseis from him." The warrior was ready to fight for her, but the king's daughter did not want blood to be shed because of her. The Trojan commander Glaucus was sure that the city walls would withstand any attack and they would win tomorrow's battle. And the high priest saw an eagle carrying a snake in its claws, which meant that they would definitely win, but Hector was not as optimistic as these two. Paris took the floor and declared that tomorrow he would challenge Menelaus to a duel. There was no need for others to shed their blood for him. Priam gave his youngest son the sword of Troy, which had been passed down from king to king since the city's foundation. Hector's wise wife understands that 100,000 Greek warriors have not come here to watch a duel over a woman. It will not end there. Helen is also in despair. So many people have died today because of her. The woman wanted to return to her husband, but there is no point in that anymore. At dawn, all the Greeks gathered to go to battle, all except Achilles, who was insulted, who ordered his men to stay. He asked Patroclus not to give his life for a stupid king. Achilles said to Patroclus, "Soldiers fight for kings they have never seen. They go to their deaths when they are told to die." The Trojan army lined up at the walls of the fortress city, but perhaps Paris will have to fight alone today. Priam's eyes widened when he saw the enemy army. Glaucus also thought about it. The army of all Asia Minor came here to conquer the unconquered city. The princes met with the conquering brothers. The angry Menelaus despises Paris. He received the young man in his home as an honored guest, and this guest stole his wife. Agamemnon offered Hector to capitulate, but according to the prince, all 50,000 Trojan warriors are ready to give their lives for their homeland. Paris offered Menelaus to resolve the dispute in a fair fight and prevent a massacre between the armies, but Agamemnon refused. But Agamemnon's brother asked to give the opportunity to wash away his shame with the blood of Paris. Fear appeared in Paris's eyes because he had never risked his life, and his opponent had been through many battles. Menelaus immediately threw out his shield and went on the attack. He kicks and pushes the skinny boy. Soon Paris was also left without a shield. He parried several blows from Menelaus, but then was wounded in the leg. The big man knocked the prince's sword out and put the blade to his neck, but suddenly Paris shamefully crawled back to his brother and grabbed his leg. Menelaus wanted to finish off Paris, but Hector pierced him with his sword. The treaty was broken and Agamemnon ordered his army to attack. The young prince grabbed the legendary sword and hid behind the gate. The Greeks ran into a wall of shields from the Trojan warriors, and then the famous Trojan archers got down to business. Every few seconds, hundreds of arrows were fired towards the enemy, breaking his battle line. Hector saw the giant Ajax and realized that he had to fight him. Falling to the ground, he covered himself with a shield and then pierced Ajax with a spear. But this was not enough and Hector finished off the enemy with his sword. After this, the Trojans went on the attack and began to push the Greeks away from the walls of their city. Agamemnon suffered his first defeat and Odysseus persuaded him to retreat. The Trojans began to chase the Greeks, but Hector ordered them to stop so as not to become victims of enemy archers. The prince also ordered to collect the bodies of the slain enemies and escort them to the next world with all honors. Paris is ashamed in front of Helen for his actions, but the woman replied that she does not need a hero, but a beloved husband. Odysseus asks Agamemnon to make peace with Achilles. Only he can raise the morale of the Greeks. True, he will demand the girl back, and the king has already given her to be torn apart by the soldiers. They were just about to brand Briseis as a slave, but Achilles saved the princess and carried her back to his tent. There he fed the girl and allowed her to wash. At night, Briseis put a sword to his throat, but in the end lost her virginity to the great warrior. This night made Achilles think. He remembered his mother's words and chose a long life with his beloved woman, so he ordered Eutorus to prepare to sail. This time, even Odysseus could not persuade him to change his mind. Patroclus was also indignant. He believes that his brother betrayed Greece just to spite the hated king. The high priest and Glaucus convinced the king to attack the Greeks and finish them off, but Hector is against it, because the Myrmidons did not participate in the battle yesterday, and an attack can unite all the Greeks. Unfortunately, Priam decided not to listen to his son's advice. At night the Trojans fired at the shore with fiery arrows, and after that they rolled huge balls that instantly ignited, so they set fire to the camp of their enemies. At dawn, Hector led his army into an attack to drown the Greeks in the sea. Achilles changed his mind and decided to fight the Trojans. This inspired the entire Greek army. The two armies engaged in a bloodbath. Achilles reached Hector, and these two strong warriors crossed their swords. But surprisingly, Hector quickly dealt with his opponent and killed him by cutting his throat. However, it was not Achilles but his young brother Patroclus who put on the armor of the great warrior. Hector was upset and announced that the fight was over for today. Achilles left the tent in a good mood because today they had to return home, but when he found out what happened to Patroclus, he almost strangled Eutorus and Briseis. Hector realized that something irreparable had happened, so he showed his wife a secret underground passage with which she could safely get out of the city, because if the Greeks break through, they will kill all the men and make slaves of the women. At night, Achilles said goodbye to Patroclus. At dawn, Hector and Achilles put on armor. One of them will die today. Achilles sat on the chariot and did not even turn around to look at Briseis, who begged him not to go because Hector was her brother and she loved him very much. Achilles rode up to the city walls and began to call Hector to battle. The best son of Troy said goodbye to his father and brother, and then reminded his wife about the secret tunnel. Sad Helen also watched him go. Hector went out to his enemy and tried to negotiate that the defeated warrior should be given all the honors due, but Achilles replied that he would cut off his ears and cut out his eyes so Hector would appear in Hades blind, mute and deaf. The battle began. Hector was exhausted and Achilles plunged a broken spear into him, and then took his life with a sword. As Achilles promised, his enemy will not receive honors. He tied Hector to the chariot and dragged him to the camp right to his tent. Seeing Achilles, Briseis realized that she had lost her brother. At night, old Priam came to Achilles along a secret path, fell on his knees and began to kiss the hands of his son's killer. He begs for the return of Hector's body. The son deserves a decent burial. Achilles was touched by the king's words, and he agreed to give up Hector's body. Achilles covered Hector's mutilated body with cloth and burst into tears over it. He promised that the Greeks would not attack Troy for 12 days while Hector's mourning lasts. He also returned his daughter to her father. Priam thought that Briseis was already dead. Achilles asked the girl for forgiveness for everything and let her go. The vain king is ready to litter the ruins of Troy with the corpses of all his soldiers just to win this war. Hearing this, Odysseus began to think how they could win and at the same time save the lives of his soldiers. The Trojans said goodbye to the glorious warrior Hector, and 12 days later they found the dead bodies of the Greeks on the shore, whose lives were taken by the plague, and the rest sailed away from Troy. There was a huge horse assembled from the wreckage of ships as an offering to the god Poseidon. Paris wanted to burn it right there, but the priests insisted that it should be taken because it was still a gift to the gods. Priam again did not listen to the words of his son, and the giant horse was dragged into the city. All of Troy celebrates an unexpected victory over the Greeks, but a scout discovered enemy ships on the other shore, although he did not have time to tell anyone about it because the Greeks killed him. At night, a small detachment climbed out of the wooden horse, and the guards got drunk along with everyone else, so they could not prevent the Greeks from opening the gates to the city. Tens of thousands of Greeks entered Troy and committed a terrible massacre there, killing everyone who got in their way, sparing neither women nor children. The houses of the Trojans were burned, and the temples were plundered. Achilles hopes to find Briseis to protect her from the brutal warriors. Troy burns before the eyes of the careless King Priam, while Agamemnon asks his soldiers not to stop and burn the city to the ground. Hector's wife led Paris with Helen and other residents to the tunnel, but the prince decided to stay to fight with the rest of the warriors. He handed the sword of Troy to a young man named Aeneas. He must find a new home for the surviving Trojans. The Greeks reached the palace, which is defended by Glaucus with the remnants of the Trojan army. Soon they parted with their lives, and the great commander was stabbed to death by Odysseus. "You have no honor," Old Man Priam shouts, watching the Greeks knock down the statues of the gods. Agamemnon stabbed him in the back with a spear, after which the king reached Briseis and was already fantasizing about how she would wash his feet, but then the girl took out a dagger and stabbed him in the neck. Achilles protected her from the Greek soldiers, and Paris also appeared here. He began to shoot arrow after arrow at the enemy until the legendary warrior fell to his knees. Before his death, Achilles said goodbye to Briseis. Only with her could he find peace. In the morning, Odysseus put 2 coins on his friend's eyes so that he could pay the ferryman on the Styx River.